that this one you're planning on being a trilogy.
Yes.
And you've got your other one that's maybe potentially going to be about 7 books. Do you have any other kind of things that are working on in the background, or is it mostly just these 2 things?
I have a bunch of ideas. I probably have, I don't know, at the rate I write, which is slow, like 30 years worth of ideas. So I hope I don't think of anything else because I got the pond stocked. So I have one that I'd set it in a kind of like a North African or like South Italian setting, kind of like and it basically be like Gladiator, but if doing that was like the best means to fame and like the cost of pursuing that at all costs. Like what would happen if it wasn't like if the gladiators were like rock stars and it wasn't slaves who were being forced to fight, but like people who volunteered to do it because it was like the best means to achieve like fame and wealth.
Yeah.
And again, that's like a setting that I think would be really interesting and I'd want to explore. And so like that's like one premise I have. And I have a faint plot for that would probably be 2 to 3 books. I'd also I have 1 or 2 ideas for a setting in like Roman England or Roman Britain when they were trying to settle that and kind of at war with like the Celtic and Gallic tribes. So, I definitely, I have a few ideas and we'll see which one I write after Shadow Bane. The 7-book one is going to be like, I'm going to come back to that much, much, much later.
Yeah.
I'll definitely have to be writing full time for me to tackle that one.
Yeah. It's kind of the one, it's like, Brandon Sanderson's Stormlight Archive. That's his like the big one. And then he's got all the little ones around, but that's like the big guy.
Yeah, that's as ambitious as this project is. Like I will need to be at the absolute top of my game. So I'll take on some smaller projects. I'll make some mistakes. I'll learn more. And when I feel like 100% ready to tackle that, I'll get after it.
Yeah. What kind of influences do you have? I see back on your shelf there you got the Aragon books, which I love those books. What other kind of influences do you have?
So the tiny ones next to Aragon are the Redwall series. Those are the first fantasy books I ever read. Picked those up when I was like 9, and then from there, and then I read Aragon, and I really loved those books when I was a teenager. And then I got into R.A. Salvatore's like Legend of Driss series and the Forgotten Realms books, which are kind of all on that side there. That's like 2 shelves worth. And then I went through a period where I wasn't reading as much because I was in college and in grad school. And then I came out of that, and I'd kind of outgrown some of the stuff that I grew up on, like in childhood and high school. Still huge influences, and they're what sparked my love of the genre. And then I got into, and that's kind of when I started getting into Grimdark. I picked up one of Luke Skull's books. You familiar with him? The Grimm Company. So definitely a tip of the cap to the Black Company.
Yeah.
And so that was my first taste of Grimdark, and I was like, oh my god, this is spectacular. And then I got into Joe Abercrombie, and so he's my favorite writer now, as he is for many fantasy fantasy fans and authors alike. And I kind of never looked back from that. I was like, this is the subgenre that is like my favorite thing.
Yeah.
Just it has everything I like. It's dark, morally gray characters. It's violent and cynical and funny, and it just has that like that I really enjoy after like 15 years of reading like classic like noble good guy must win fantasy. I really gravitated towards things that were a little just felt a little different.
Yeah. So you probably would like Batman a little more than Superman, is what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, Joe Abercrombie's on my list. I'm a horribly slow reader, so I have like a huge list of books, but like I have not read any Joe Abercrombie, but he's on the list. I've also got John Gwynn's books. Is it John Gwynn?
Yeah.
Yeah. I got his books on the list. I'm real excited about those. I love the Viking type stuff.
I think I need to get on those next because I hadn't really heard of him until like this last year, and then everyone I know is talking about him. I know he's been doing this for a while, but like sometimes like something just doesn't come across your radar, and then all of a sudden you hear about them like 50 times.
Yeah. It's amazing how that happens. There's so many books like that where it's like someone will be like this, like you'll come across one that you've never heard of, but then you find out it has this like massive fan base that people have loved for years. Like that for me was Wheel of Time. Like I hadn't heard of it forever, like at all. And then my brother, someone, I think it was my brother, came across it. And then I find out it's been a favorite fantasy series of like millions of people forever. And I just had no idea about it.
I had this. So I'm a personal trainer, and I had this client who avid like audiobook consumer, and he was telling me about the, and he was into fantasy. And he's telling me about this series and how like it was super long, and the author died, and Brandon Sanderson finished it, and I'm like, oh, he's talking about Wheel of Time, but he was telling me about this because I haven't read it, so I don't know any specifics.
Right.
But I was aware of just like it in general. And then it took like a few conversations about it, and I was like, yeah, he's talking about Wheel of Time, like and then it's like one of like the greatest, like most influential fantasy series of all time.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm actually I'm only about halfway through it. So one thing I found, and I'd be interested to see if you have anything like this. I love the series. I love the characters. I love the story. Like I love everything about it, the world building, all that stuff. I really struggle with Robert Jordan's prose. So like everything about it I love, but like reading the prose is for some reason just kind of hard for me. It's not even that it's bad. It just I don't know, something about it's just hard for me. Do you have anything like that? Like there's a book where you're like, I really love this book, but this
So
part was hard.
I'm a huge stickler on prose,
Yeah.
and this is what has made it so hard for me to go back to the stuff I enjoyed as a kid. So Legend of Drizzt, R.A. Salvatore, I was in love with those books. He was my favorite author for the longest time. Same
Mhm.
thing, love the characters, love the world. And there's so many great moments and antagonists in that series. And then I went back and tried to read it after I started writing seriously. And I actually think the prose was one of the things I got down first. I didn't know much about story structure or pacing or arcs or anything, but the prose kind of came pretty intuitively. And I went back and tried to read his stuff, and it was really tough for me. And I just kind of had to accept that it's like I'm just not at a place where I can really enjoy that anymore. So
Yeah.
I kind of appreciate it for like the inspiration and the ideas it gave me, and how much I just loved reading it when I was younger. But I'm just not at a place where I dig into it now and have the same feeling about it. Which
Have
is also, sorry,
no, you're
which
good.
is also what made me enjoy like Luke Skull and Joe Abercrombie's writing so much. Is that their writing? It's just like it just bites you. Like it's so like terse and just well, like it just cuts on like sentence after sentence. It's excellent.
Yeah. That's well, I'm a big fan of Brandon Sanderson. That's part of why is I think he just writes his prose isn't fanciful, but he just writes very cleanly. Like, you know what he's talking about, you know what he's saying. I think he's a really, one of the things I think he does super well is his endings, like his climaxes of his stories. Just like,
Sandalanche.
oh man, it's just all of a sudden you're like, yep, we're in the climax. Here we go. And then it's just like, crazy till the end.
Yeah. One of the things that I really like about him is he understands writing to like a fundamental science.
Hmm.
So his lectures on YouTube
Oh, yeah.
were some of the resources and things that I was looking at that helped me understand that like writing a story is not just this like mystical thing that just like comes to you. It's like no, like there's a process, and you can reason through it, and there's a reason why certain things work and why certain things don't, and you can
Hmm.
connect certain things, and there's a way to add layers and add texture to your work so that it feels like rich and fluid and still moves forward. And he understands it so well. It was fascinating just to watch him talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah, those lectures are chocked full of stuff. I've told anytime anyone's ever like, where should I start? I'm like, watch those lectures. Like
Yeah,
that's a perfect place to start. Cause he just yeah, I agree. He just the nuts and bolts of how everything works, he's just a master at it.
yeah, yeah, 100%. And the fact that he's so like willing just to take his time and enjoy and like just throw that out there. It's like this is like a gold mine of information.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah. There's a YouTuber, you've probably seen her, Abby Emmons. Have you heard of her?
Yes,
Yeah. She is also really good at, obviously way less known than Brandon Sanderson, of course, but I've got a lot of stuff from her videos of like she's really good at breaking some things down and different like why certain things work and why other things don't. was on a big kick of hers for a while because she just has a lot of good stuff. So those are two resources for sure. I would definitely check out her stuff and like the Brandon Sanderson, which apparently he did. Did he do some new ones or something? Someone told me there's like two versions of it, but I've only seen the one.
I'll have to go look. The one I'm familiar with is where he's at BYU and
Yeah.
he's drawing on the whiteboard and he's just going to town. Like every like 10 seconds, I was pausing and being like, I should write this down.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like one of the I'm a horrible note taker for classes, but that was like the one time I'm watching something where I'm like, yeah, I should really be taking some notes. Yeah.
I went to college and grad school. I took notes like 4 times in 6 years, and then I was like writing down half of what he said.
Yeah.
I was like, this is really important.